Thank you for joining us on Perspectives with Asima Silva. And we're going to be hearing about the Al-Noor School and what is the first Muslim school that is K through 12 in the state of Massachusetts. Do the kids all have to call you Mr. Henshaw when they are there at school?
We typically go by brother and our first name, so I'm Brother Hamzah at the school.
So Brother Hamzah is here with us today to talk about the school. And Asima, give us a little bit of the background about how not only Al-Noor School came, how you came to be there, but also about a brand new venture that you have that seems very timely for what is in the news, with some Supreme Court decisions over the last week about how you can help some kids be able to get to college and fulfill their dreams. So welcome and thank you for coming today.
Thank you so much.
I'll let you get started.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just so that our viewers know how I met this wonderful person. It was on Facebook, of course, and I came across his article, and he was talking about curriculum and English, and of course he quoted one of my favorite movies of all time, The Dead Poets Society. And I said, that's it. I think I need to talk to this person and talk about schools and curriculum, which is, of course, some of my interests, as some of you know. I decided, I asked him, could you please come in person, talk about some of the perspectives that you have. I wanted a new perspective, a perspective not that everybody knows about, right? Because with an Islamic Muslim perspective at an Islamic school, and your experience working with K through 12, throughout high school, very rare. We don't have a lot of Muslim high schools in this country, especially in this area. And those were the kind of topics I wanted to cover today. And I wanted to let the audience know that I was just shocked that you were quoting Dead Poet Society with the Muslim context and how English should be taught. So please, I would just like you to continue introducing yourself if I missed anything.
Right. Well, yeah, I think Dead Poet Society is a great place to start. I actually went to high school myself at St. Mark's School in Southborough, so close to this Worcester community. And I had an English teacher there in 9th grade who was also my advisor, Mr. Engel, who just transformed my life. He was just an incredible teacher, really gave me a lot of confidence in my own abilities as a writer. He did this amazing thing called Creps and Classics, where he would take us into Boston and we'd sort of eat in Faneuil Hall, and then we'd go and listen to classical music there. And he embodied everything that I could imagine a teacher being. And when I eventually saw Dead Poet Society, then you have Mr. Keating, the Robin Williams character, again just turning lighting the fire of his students through poetry and literature and so on. My mother is an English teacher as well. She taught at the Windsor School in Boston for over 30 years. And so I've always sort of been drawn towards the liberal arts and so on. So when I came time to figuring out my own career trajectory and so on, I initially went towards the world of finance, thinking specifically Islamic finance, thinking that's where I'd find the most success. But pretty quickly I realized that I was more a man of letters than numbers. And I sort of made the transition towards education, and I've been an educator ever since.
Interesting. Now, you say Islamic finance. So was there always a component where you wanted, though, for there to be the focus through Islam on what it was that you were doing, whether teaching now or this other career path you could have chosen?
Right. So when I became Muslim when I was at St. Mark's, an unusual story in and of itself to find Islam at a school with an Episcopalian tradition. Yeah. But I don't know. We can take the conversation wherever it goes. But that was at the age of 15, an incredibly formative moment in my life, and it definitely influenced sort of what I wanted to study. When I was going through the application process, I really wanted to learn Arabic and learn more about Islam. So when I applied to college, that was sort of the focus, and I think that was one of the reasons maybe I stood out, this sort of American guy interested in some unusual subjects.
Yeah.
And so I ended up getting into Harvard and going there, and I majored in Near Eastern languages and civilizations, and which is sort of Arabic and Middle Eastern history, and then I did some economics along the way. But once you graduate with that kind of liberal arts degree, you have to figure out, okay, how am I going to feed myself?
Right.
And so I had worked within, Harvard has an Islamic finance information program. So I'd worked there as an undergrad, and I'd gotten to know a lot of people in the industry. So that seemed like a natural path. I had various experiences within that world. I worked both in New York with Rockefeller and Company, which is sort of the asset management wing of the Rockefeller family. They had a big Muslim client over in Saudi that I sort of helped. In retrospect, I think I was more of like a cultural attaché who I traveled with the CEO over to Jeddah shortly after 9/11. So it was a very politically charged time, and I think having someone who was familiar with sort of both American and Muslim Arab culture was helpful. And then I later worked in South Africa at an asset management company there, again with an Islamic focus. So it definitely brought me around the world and was a very interesting field. But ultimately, I decided, as I said before, to transition towards
Well, I would
education.
think, though, now with this new career path that you're going to be considering, it sort of combines the two. So you have your students, many of whom I'm sure will come to you now that you've been teaching, and then to help them get into college. The finances, the expense of going to college these days is such a huge part of it.
Oh, absolutely. And definitely, business and entrepreneurship has always been something that I've been fascinated by, and I think that's been sort of a siren call in the back of my mind, saying, I want to try something more entrepreneurial. I actually taught a course this spring at the school on entrepreneurship for the juniors and seniors, which culminated in sort of a Muslim Shark Tank event, which was great. So it's exciting. That's sort of what I've just been, reading and listening to podcasts and all these sorts of things with this vision of starting a company of my own but still firmly within the educational world.
Yeah, K through 12.
K through 12.
Tell me a little bit about the school itself, the fact that it was the first in Massachusetts, and just a little bit about that environment.
Right. So the school is Al-Noor Academy. So it was founded initially as a K through 8 school. It was called the Islamic Academy of New England, and it was a K through 8 school, and it was on the campus of the Sharon Mosque, the Islamic Center of New England in Sharon. And actually, the very, very first teaching position I ever had was teaching at that place, the Islamic Academy of New England. It was a maternity leave position back in 2002 or 3, where I first experienced, being in the classroom. So shortly after the school was founded, they realized, it was founded in 1996. In the year 2000, they realized we really need a place for high school students. There are quite a few Islamic schools. They're here in Shrewsbury. We have Al-Noor Academy. Yep. There's Al-Huda Academy as well here in Worcester. So there are quite a few K through 8 Islamic schools, but there really wasn't a high school at that point. So our board, decided to start something called Al-Noor Academy. Initially, it was very humble. It started in the basement of a mosque in Quincy. But it grew fairly quickly, and in 2005, they purchased our current building, which is a former Catholic church in Mansfield, and they did a great renovation to the building, and it became Al-Noor Academy. So for quite some time, Al-Noor Academy was a grade 6 through 12 school, and then the Islamic Academy of New England was grade pre-K through 5, and 3 or 4 years ago, we decided to officially merge and become, the first K through 12, pre-K through 12 Islamic school.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So my curiosity is, you went to Harvard, you were working with asset management firms, Islamic finance, obviously with adults. And I understand your interest in education, but how did you go to teaching kids?
Right. I guess, working with adults isn't necessarily all it's cracked up to be. I think, maybe this is, hindsight is 2020, but I feel like working with younger people, you really have more of an opportunity to really shape them. I think my own high school experience was so formative in terms of developing my worldview and my belief system and so on, that I always sort of wanted to give back. And working, specifically with sort of the early high school years, so 9th and 10th grade, those I feel like are the real sweet spot. So many people around that age of 15 have these epiphanies and these moments where they really get clarity around their life mission. And to be able to help, a student like Mr. Engel did for me, find clarity at that moment is just incredibly rewarding. But definitely, working with in finance and in that world was very interesting itself. And
What do you find your students, and as you said, so here you are working with some students who at an age might have the same sort of epiphany as you. I don't know how many are becoming Episcopalians, but somebody might have the same sort of epiphany that you did, at least about what their career path is going to be, even at that young age. What are you sort of seeing? Is there a move towards, and I guess I'll tell you where I'm going with this. My feeling is that this is a generation, particularly post-COVID, that there has been a change in America about how, younger people, we always say this about, but truly about how they view life, about how they view their work balance with their personal balance, about how they want to give back, the way you're talking about, how that sort of has driven you in your life to give back as well. I think we have a generation in which they're really looking for answers on that, about how they can make a difference in the world.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with that. I think right. COVID did a number on our youth, we at school transitioned pretty much over the course of one weekend from an in-person to a synchronous online model, and then the entire following year we remained online. So for almost 15 months of teaching, we were we were fully online, definitely, the pandemic has had a lasting impact on the kids. I think one of the major things is I think screens had already sort of taken over, and this just exacerbated that.
Yes.
And one of my students actually used a term that resonated with me. He said that this is the algorithm generation, right? In the sense that YouTube and TikTok and all of these things have these very sophisticated algorithms. That these companies know us better than we know ourselves, and they're able to sort of suck us in and send us down that rabbit hole. And what really impresses me is the students who sort of recognize that and recognize the manipulation and that sort of thing that they're being subjected to, and are actively fighting back against it. Maybe going back to more analog methods. I've seen students sort of move away from taking notes on their laptop and moving back towards the old notebook system, or trying to get back out in nature and go for walks and hiking, and sort of some of the Stoicism as a philosophy. This ancient philosophy has suddenly become very in vogue, both in the business world, but even among some of the students as well. So I think their awareness of this moment that we're in is inspiring, and it's great to see the strategies that they're coming up with to deal with some of those things.
Do you mind sharing with us some of the, because I'm curious, the way you wrote that article, first of all, I guess the basis is, what kind of curriculum did the Islamic schools have? I know many of our viewers would want to know that. And how did you perceive which changes needed to be made, and how?
Right, so I think Islamic schools, as they came about, they were mostly founded by immigrants who had come to the country and were concerned for their own children, how they could, continue to be connected to their traditions, their faith, and so on. And most of them had been exposed to the public school world. And so what I think a lot of Islamic schools have done is they've looked at the public school model and they've essentially copy and pasted that and then added in some extra courses, whether it's in Quranic memorization, in Arabic language, that tends to be the foreign language that's taught, and then of course in religious studies and Islamic studies and so on. So and that's more or less the model that Al-Noor Academy has followed, where we follow the Massachusetts curriculum for all of our secular subjects, our math and our English and history and so on. But then we also, in addition, have these sort of subject areas more connected to to Islam and so on. Within English, one of the things I really appreciate about the school is they more or less gave me carte blanche to design a curriculum that really worked for me. And so coming from St. Mark's and coming from Harvard and this liberal arts background, I love the classics. I love Shakespeare. I love Jane Austen. I love these kinds of things. And so they say you teach who you are. So I decided that those are some of the things that I wanted to teach the children. I think some schools are more reluctant on those areas. They want you to be very careful with your curriculum. They give you sort of a cookie cutter out of the box curriculum where you don't really teach literature, but you teach about literature and so on. That was sort of antithetical to my beliefs and around teaching English. I really wanted them to get their hands dirty with the real texts and so on. And poetry is another huge one, getting back to Dead Poets Society.
But also really what you found so interesting about school and what had motivated you when you were younger too, and you want to bring that same experience to this new generation. I want to make sure we have some time for you to tell us more about your new venture as well and how that's going to be helping people.
Right. So back in January, I decided to start a weekly newsletter, and this is, I think, what you read.
Yes.
So it's called 5 Before 5, and it's on Substack. Anyone can find it pretty easily there. And the idea behind this, there's a famous hadith or tradition of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, where he said, take advantage of 5 before 5. And then he enumerated your youth before your old age. So take advantage of your youth before your old age, your health before your sickness, your wealth before your poverty, your free time before your busyness, and your life before your death. Right? And so this, I've always been struck by this hadith and this concept and that particular phrasing, 5 before 5, because I think it sort of encapsulates the real human experience. These 5 things, if we manage to take advantage of them, take benefit of them, then we will lead a productive, fulfilling life. And because I sort of sit at this sort of tectonic plates of sort of American culture and Muslim culture, I really wanted to figure out a platform and a way to share insights from the Islamic tradition with my non-Muslim friends and family, but also to share insights from many of the sort of Western thinkers and literature and so on that I think a lot of Muslims haven't had the exposure to. And so that was sort of the idea, that every week I would share sort of 5 thoughts around the world of education and wealth and health and so on, with this broad audience. And so I began that, and it's sort of a weekly. It comes out every Friday, and it helped clarify for me, sort of what I want to be doing next in my career. I think one of the most I think teaching English is definitely the most rewarding and impactful thing that I have done as an educator. However, in terms of the most important in the longer term for students, it was really helping place them in college. Al-Noor is a small school, shoestring budget. The tuition is less than $9,000, dramatically different than St. Mark's with I don't even know tuition. It's probably over 50K, and I used to teach at the Fay School as well, a wonderful school, but also just very, very expensive, out of reach for people. So Al-Noor is this, small school. My students, while there are certainly the children of doctors and dentists and so on, many of their parents will maybe drive Uber or something like that. So it's not it has a really wide socioeconomic diversity. And I was able to work with them and help place them in college. And we've had really tremendous success. The very first student I ever placed, he got in early to Harvard, and since then we've sent, I think, 4 or 5 students to Brown over the last 3 years. We've sent students to Northwestern, several to MIT. This year we're sending one to Dartmouth and one to UPenn. And it's just we have classes of 12 to 18 students. So we can use the statistics, like 20% of our students go to Ivy League schools or equivalent, which I think is just a remarkable story. And I wanted to bring that same energy and to the Muslim community as a whole. Having demonstrated an ability to do it at Al-Noor, I'd like everyone to be able to benefit from that and sort of use some of my accumulated expertise to help a broader swath of the world.
As you're talking, I'm very curious on when you talked about teaching poetry. Do you teach Rumi?
I do, yeah. So this year we did a poem of the week. That was our. So every Monday we would study a different poet, and sometimes I would let the students choose and so on. And so we did study some Rumi. We didn't go into huge depth. We usually did it, most of our study was more on the poetry rather than the poet. We didn't go as deeply into it. But absolutely it was.
Do you mind giving our viewers who Rumi is? Because I'm not sure if everyone's familiar. I know most Muslims are, but I don't think everyone's familiar.
So Jalaluddin Rumi was, I'd need to look up the exact dates and so on. But he was a poet and a mystic, Sufi mystic, and his poetry, I believe, I've heard, I don't know how they quantify something like this, that he's the most popular poet in even in the West, even here in the West.
Yeah.
And I think, the interesting thing to me, I think when many Westerners read Rumi poetry, they don't necessarily know of its sort of roots and its Islamic undertones and so on. This year we studied a Ramadan poem of Rumi, which was about fasting and about sort of the joy of that. But the way it's written is very subtle, and I think for and in that sense, it's sort of like what I tried to do with 5 Before 5, where it's applicable to all. It's not, yes, it is rooted in the Islamic tradition, but it's something that everyone can benefit from. So if anyone hasn't.
Well, my curiosity was not only did you teach Rumi, but with Rumi, his original poetry was in Arabic, and Arabic is such a powerful, dense language that I know even with translations, and I know he's very popular in the Western world. But I'm sure we're losing a lot of that essence in the translations. So I was curious on if you also kind of touch that with the kids.
Right. I'd have to do some fact. I believe Rumi wrote in Farsi, as opposed to Arabic, and that's not a language that I have a lot of familiarity with. So I was. But
Farsi is also a very dense language as well.
100%. I've heard it's an incredibly rich language. When I have worked with students on poets or writers who are of Arab background, I really do enjoy pulling particular Arabic lines. from those, and then the students have differing levels of Arabic, but between them and some of the other teachers at the school, it's great to look at the art of translation and just the depth. They say that reading a poem in translation is like looking at an Oriental rug, from behind. You can sort of sense that it's very beautiful, but you don't get the real vision of it. And that's what I find with the Quran, for example. Learning
Yes.
Arabic has allowed me to appreciate that when I hear it and so on such a deeper level than I did when I was just reading it in translation.
Interesting. All right. We do have just a few minutes left. I want to make sure that we have time for your perspective
Yep.
on all of this, as well as if there's a website or something where
Yeah,
people can
please.
go, particularly for your new business, please share it with us.
Oh, absolutely. So I just for now I'm directing people towards hamzahhenshaw.com. That's my name, HAMZAH. Henshaw, HENSHAW.com. And the newsletter is 5 before 5. So if you Google that, and it's on Substack, and subscribe to that, those are the best ways to get in touch with me.
So I'm going to start wrapping up, but before I do, I wanted to tell you to please tell your older brother. I said hi and thank you for giving a good word. What a small world, right? So when he was telling his older brother he's going to come on this show, we found out that we actually know each other. But to wrap up, one of the things that I loved about the article that I read, I know it talked about poetry, but I too had a teacher in high school who really resonated with me. Mr. Mamoni from Wachusett, he's retired. But I swear to God, he had eyes in the back of his head. And he knew exactly when someone did not pay attention. If there was 5 seconds of a student who lost concentration, he knew it and he would call on them. It only happened to me once, and I learned my lesson. But he taught me how to be extremely confident in my writing. He was an extremely, extremely feared but respected teacher. And I can't, whenever I think of English, I think of him. So I'm sure that you're probably that Mr. Mamoni to so many other kids. And so when you wrote that article, I thought to myself, I need to learn, I need to figure out what went through his head and how did he also find the passion to teach high school students and make such an impression. I hope you guys also enjoyed this show. As you know, some of the things that I'm always interested in is education, interviewing people, looking for inspirations, and motivating others to do the same. So I hope you join us again next time on Perspectives with Asima Silva.